No way. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Get the Word Out. We are talking energy bills on today's episode. It's pretty exciting, slightly depressing, alarming, but we need to know. Just about everybody's energy bills have gone up in Indiana over the last few years, and it's going to get worse. Why? Well, there's very specific reasons why, and thankfully I have Kerwin Olsen, the executive director of Citizens Action Coalition, that has been tracking this and doing everything they can to stop it, on with us today. And he's going to explain it to us, break it down, and explain what we can do to stop it. Kerwin, thank you so much for being on the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. And yeah, thanks so much for having us on. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to shout out to Jesse Brown, who helped connect us. I really appreciate that because I've been wanting to talk to somebody from Citizens Action Coalition. I feel really honored that I get to speak with you. This is your full-time job. I just found that out. Is that correct?
Yeah. I've been with Citizens Action Coalition since 2005, going on 20 years now, and the executive director since 2011. Yeah, I love what I do, and it's a real privilege and an honor to do the work. Yeah.
So what is your main job, if you could just sum it up simply? What are you paid to do?
Well, I would characterize Citizens Action Coalition as the utility watchdog in the state of Indiana. We work, not exclusively, but primarily at the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, intervening in significant cases of the investor-owned electric utilities, sometimes the gas utilities, and we've also started to dabble a little bit in water and wastewater issues. As well as we're seeing significant escalations in those costs as well. But we also work at the Indiana General Assembly, working on behalf of consumers, ratepayers, on policies related to, utility bills, energy policy in general. And we believe strongly in investments in clean energy and energy efficiency. So we've spent, the better part of a little over 5 decades working on advancing clean energy in Indiana, working on protecting ratepayers with a keen eye, especially towards low-income households, vulnerable households, and ensuring that that all Hoosiers have access to essential human services. That's our primary mission, and it's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it.
So what made you want to get involved in this work? Because it seems extremely important and also very, very hard.
Yeah, no, indeed. I was in the lawn and landscaping business in the corporate world, running big crews, and I had a midlife crisis, I guess, in my mid to late 30s. I had very political parents. Politics was a big topic of discussion in my house, activist parents, if you will, and I sort of had a midlife crisis, and I'm like, I think I wasn't supposed to do this. I was supposed to do something else. I saw an ad in the newspaper, Citizens Action Coalition hiring some part-time phone canvassers, and I go, I've heard of those guys, and I walked in for an interview, got the job, and here I am. So it changed my life.
That's amazing. I imagine it feels good to do something so important.
Yes, definitely want to give back. I saw a lot of people struggle in my life, working class folks working hard and struggling to make ends meet, and I wanted to make a difference.
The thing, since I've been involved in politics and now with Project Next Media, that upset me the most is we're supposed to be protecting those that are most vulnerable. Like, that's the government's job. We're supposed to be setting up systems and looking out for people that are working jobs and struggling to pay their bills. And instead, I just constantly find, no, the people that are very rich are doing everything that they can to keep themselves richer and to hurt those that are struggling and are too busy to pay attention because they're just trying to keep food on the table and pay their energy bills. And it's upsetting because you just kind of assume your elected officials would be working to help you.
Yes, we need to lift people up. We need to protect the most vulnerable, and again, ensure that that they have access. Because what we're talking about in the work that we do at CAC is access to essential human services, lights, heating your home in the wintertime, or refrigerator to keep the milk cold, hot water to take a shower. We're talking about basic necessities of life that enable people to participate in society in a meaningful way and live their lives in dignity. We should all want that. And so we should all strive to make sure that every single inhabitant of the state of Indiana has access to uninterrupted essential human services so that they can live a dignified life and be a productive member of society. It confuses us when that that isn't our main objective when we legislate.
Right.
We should be crafting legislation that solves problems and improves people's lives. And so many times we just fabricate problems and pass policy because of the deep pocketed influence of the moneyed interest down there at the State House with lobbyists working 365, 24/7.
Yeah, I really became aware of this problem when I ran for state house. That website opensecrets.org.
Yeah.
I would look that up and look at my opponents, look at the people that, my friends and I were running against, and see what special interests gave them money. And our energy groups, our lobbyists that lobby for energy groups, they are in there. They are donating money to our elected officials. So it is definitely part of the problem here. So I found out about you guys when I was running for state house. My friend Michelle Higgs, who started Indiana Rural Summit, she called me one day and said, "Sarah, do you know about this problem?" And I said, "No, I don't understand. I don't know anything about energy bills and our problem. I know that our energy bills are going up. I don't know why." And she sent me to you guys. So I started following you all. And that's when I became a little bit aware that laws had been passed in Indiana. And the way I understood it, and you can explain it in better detail, is the government gave up some control of our energy companies, overseeing them raising prices, that now they set up their own boards, the energy companies, to raise our energy prices. And they also changed how easy it is to raise the rates. Like, they don't even have to have a specific reason. They can just say they're going to do stuff in the future and they can charge us for that. I know we have solar panels in our house, and I know that we get duped some of our money with Duke Energy and our solar panels, and I don't understand that one either. And so, yeah, if you can just help us break down, I know it's a problem. I know there were bills passed that have caused this, but can you break down what happened and what can we do, to fix it?
Yes, there has been the legislature has been complicit, if you will, in the significant increase in our monthly utility bills. And just a little quick background. We have the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission. They
Okay.
are, 5 regulators whose primary function, we created these regulatory commissions to serve as a surrogate to competition, because these utilities are monopolies. They
Right.
have no competition, but they also have an obligation to serve. But they also are investor-owned companies with a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders. They want to deliver earnings, dividends, profits, make their investors happy. So we created these regulatory commissions to act as a surrogate to competition against the inherent greediness, if you will, the whims and wishes of monopoly utility companies. However, what we've seen at the Indiana General Assembly, especially over the last 10 or 15 years, is legislation that the legislature has passed that reduces and diminishes the authority, the flexibility, and the discretion of regulators when they're reviewing a petition by a utility company for a rate case. We want our regulatory commission to have full flexibility and discretion to make decisions that are in the best interest of both the public and the utilities. We all want financially healthy utilities. Nobody's saying we don't want financially healthy utilities, but we also want a regulatory commission that balances the interests of ratepayers with the interests of the utilities in a fair manner that leads to what's called just and reasonable rates, affordable rates. That's what we want. However, the General Assembly, including this year, passes legislation that eliminates that authority, reduces their sort of discretion with things that saying, if the utility files XYZ, the IURC shall approve. That word shall, basically a mandate on the IURC, that if the utility company meets these, marginal sort of list of things that they must include in their filing, then the commission shall approve. And we often argue that shall should be a may. They
Yeah.
shouldn't be telling the
forcing them.
regulators.
So
Correct.
we can increase prices, and you, the governing body that's supposed to oversee us, have to say yes to it.
Correct. Right. So
Doesn't
we've
make
seen
any
that
sense.
year after year after year after year. And you say they make us pay for things in the future. That's a perfect example of what we've passed the last couple of years. We have the filing for the new Duke gas plant. at Cayuga, $3.3 billion. That's going to cost customers an extraordinary amount of money, probably as much as $16 or $17 a month
Wow.
before the plants are even operating or delivering any electricity. So if the commission approves that filing, ratepayers will be paying on their bills for 5, 6, potentially 7 years before that power plant's even operating, even delivering any energy, even providing any service, because of House Enrolled Act 1421, passed 2 years ago at the General, or 3 years ago at the General Assembly, that forces the commission to approve that filing, and forces ratepayers to sort of be involuntary financiers, if you will, of these gas plants. And it is absolutely outrageous, because utility ratepayers have a lot better things to do with their money than give an interest-free loan to a monopoly utility company. Duke Energy, Indiana Michigan Power, CenterPoint, they have the financial wherewithal, they have the collateral, they have the cash, they have access to capital markets. They can finance this stuff on their own, and ratepayers can pay for this stuff once it's actually delivering them electricity. But because of the power and the influence of the utility lobby at the State House and the complicity of the legislature, we pass law after law after law that forces utility ratepayers, to give these interest-free loans to utility companies, and to also sort of serve as economic development tools, if you will. We're seeing ratepayers used more and more and more, really playing the role of a taxpayer instead of the role of a ratepayer. We shouldn't lose sight of ratepayers, by definition, pay for the provision of utility service. You pay for electricity when you flick your light switch and your light comes on. You open your faucet and the water comes out. You're not there to serve as a financial tool for these monopoly utility companies. But more and more, we're seeing ratepayers being used as economic development tools on their utility bills. Why? Because elected officials don't want to raise taxes. They don't want to raise taxes, but they can pass these laws that
the price comes in other things.
Right. And everybody blames the regulators. Everybody blames the Indiana Utility. Don't get me wrong. We have our issues with the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission. They play a role in this as well. But the reality is the IURC is a creature of statute, empowered with the authority granted them by the Indiana General Assembly. And the Indiana General Assembly, year after year after year, says the IURC shall approve, the IURC shall approve, the IURC shall approve. So why even have a regulatory commission anymore? Right. Why have regulated monopolies and we just have unregulated monopolies?
So the first thing that should happen is our lawmakers should pass next year a bill that takes out the shall and puts may.
At a minimum.
Some of it. Just do that simple thing. It's not even very hard. Just take out the shall word and put may and then pass it. Why aren't they doing that?
Because the utility influence is overwhelming at the State House. The utilities have lobbyists on the ground, 365, 24/7, working legislators, working candidates, working the administration. Not only do they have heavy influence at the State House, they have enormous influence in communities with all of their community outreach they do in city county buildings and county commissions. They've got their fingers everywhere, and they work really hard.
When I went and filed for State House, and I went to that building in Indianapolis, as soon as I walked in, there were giant signs that said, like, this thing is sponsored by Duke Energy. Like, right. And then I know the New Albany, the town in Floyd County close to me, they have had things sponsored by Duke Energy. They've helped pay for playgrounds and things like that. So public wise, they look like they're a good company because they're giving money to services, to government projects. They're helping fund them, but it's like a cover. It's like, here, we're giving you this money so that we can pass this legislation and we can charge you a ton of money on your bills, and you not really notice or know whose problem or whose fault it is, and we can just keep doing this. Is that on purpose, do you think?
Sure. No, it's deliberate. Utilities are very good at what they do. They know what they're doing. However, nobody's opposed to these charitable contributions, to these philanthropy, to the community support they provide. However, that's sort of expected. We have this regulatory compact that says we give the privilege of monopoly service territory to these companies. They have a large service territory with captive customers, no competition. That's a privilege. And so along with that privilege is an expectation that they're good community partners. that they do give back to the communities that they serve, because these companies are extremely profitable, extremely financially healthy. They boast and brag about 100 years of dividends to our shareholders. I mean, their profits are exploding. They are in good shape, and they're doing all of this stuff on the backs of folks who simply cannot make ends meet. It is immoral that folks have to choose between heating their home, paying their rent, paying their utility bills, or picking up their prescription. I've gone to field hearings where I've seen seniors and veterans and disabled testifying about the struggles they have being on a fixed income, and I can't afford another $16 on my bill. Here's my expenses. Here's my Social Security check. I've got nothing left. What do you want me to cut out? I couldn't pick up my wife's prescription the other day, and it's just heartbreaking. It's immoral, and we need to fix it.
Now, what about the people at the top of these energy companies? Are they barely making any money or do you know about any of like their salaries? Can you?
Oh, they're extraordinary. I mean, there's so much out there on Google and on the web about the exorbitant salaries and compensation packages of these executives, which, on the one hand, CAC has always sort of said, we really don't care if the presidents and CEOs are making enormous salaries and have 3 homes and 2 yachts, whatever. Good for them. But when they're doing it on the backs of working class folks, vulnerable populations, and grandma, as many people say, that's not okay. That's not okay. And when people are struggling and other people are thriving, there's an imbalance, there's inequity, and it's simply not fair. And we need to restore some semblance of fairness to our process, because it's gotten a little out of control, and the cost of living is becoming extremely challenging, as we all know. And utilities and energy costs generally are part of exacerbating that, what we call the affordability crisis that everybody's facing today.
Something we were talking about before the show started was this is a bipartisan problem. This isn't a problem just because we have Republicans in office now. This was a problem when we had more Democrats in office a few years ago. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to point the finger right now at Republicans. Let's not kid ourselves. There's been a supermajority since 2012. They have all the power, and so they should accept responsibility for the legislation being passed. However, we do see Democrats voting for some of this bad stuff. And then when I started back at the State House, the Democrats were in control of the House, and our life was still pretty challenging back then. So, utility companies are very good at convincing people that we know best. Just trust us.
Right.
We're creating jobs. We're the engine that drives growth. We're attracting investments in our state. We're good corporate partners. Just trust us, and we'll take care of things. But meanwhile, bills are going up and up and up and up, and folks can't afford to live. So there's an imbalance there that needs.
That is such a problem in every situation, where I think a lot of these lawmakers think they're passing good stuff for us because lobbyists, because the people in charge profiting off of this are coming in and selling it like it's great. And what do we do to stop it? Like, I was talking to Wendy Dant-Chesser, who is the State House rep. She's a friend of mine. I don't know if you know her. She's newly.
Yes,
this was her first year. And she kind of like explained what it's like to be a State House rep, which was fascinating and sort of horrifying. She's given giant possible bills, and they don't have enough time to read them or understand them before they sign yes or no on them. And then there's these amendments that get thrown out, and it's very hard for like a human to read them all. And so she said she relies on people coming that are experts on each of the issues to come in and talk to them and explain what's good and bad. So is part of the problem the bills are too giant, so regular people that are elected officials can't possibly understand all of them? But is it also part of the problem the people that are coming in and talking are not being truthful? They're selling something that looks great, but it's not?
Well, I think you struck a nerve with me on this one, because Representative Dant-Chesser is correct. It's a lot to take in. Legislators don't have time to read the information, read the bills, understand the bills, and so they do rely on others. However, when I said they always trusted the utilities, they trust the utilities, And one of the challenges that groups like Citizens Action Coalition has, as well as other well-meaning, nonprofits, advocates that work at the State House, whether it's League of Conservation Voters or Planned Parenthood or ACLU or Association of Social Workers or whoever it is, trust the nonprofits, trust the advocates, trust our information, because we are often forced to they trust what the utilities say. They trust what the bankers say. They trust what the real estate brokers say. They trust all of the moneyed interests. Many dismiss sort of the nonprofit advocates as special interests with agendas. Our agenda is to ensure that Hoosiers have affordable utility bills and we have clean air to breathe and clean water to drink. That's our agenda. No apologies for that agenda. We have no monetary interest per se in outcomes at the State House, but yet we are met with skepticism and we are forced to, the burden of proof always falls on the nonprofit advocates. Whatever the moneyed interests say is taken as truth, taken as fact, even though it is frequently just well done PR, half truths. I'm not saying they're lying necessarily, but they're not telling the whole story. Very rosy colored, and yet we're the ones trying to disprove sometimes false negatives and other things. So I would say to folks, trust the nonprofits. You have to rely. I'm a lobbyist. I hate to say it, but I am a registered lobbyist. You have to rely on lobbyists to inform you in the process. And we have to legislators need to listen to both sides and take everything in and come to their own conclusions. But for goodness sakes, trust the human service advocates, trust the service folks, trust the people on the ground in the trenches, doing the work, seeing these struggles. So that would go a long way to improving sort of public policy outcomes.
So if I would have won my spot, which is very hard, I'm in a very gerrymandered district here and it's very rural. If I would have won and I would have been in that room, I would have listened to the lobbyists, the energy lobbyists, and then I would have listened to you guys, and then I would have come back to them with what you all were saying and like fix it. Well, here's the problem. Is there not enough time? Are they not it sounds like you're not being treated with enough respect.
There's
a problem, but I mean,
time is a problem. Resources are a problem. There are, I can't count them necessarily, but there are dozens and dozens of energy and utility lobbyists talking with all 150 legislators, constantly.
Because they have a lot of money. They have a lot of money. So they're spending a lot of money on lobbyists. They're spending a lot of money on how to phrase these words so it sounds like it's benefiting Hoosiers when it's not. And are they just overloading the State House with their people? And then you guys have got a few people with Citizens Action Coalition?
The public is outmatched. The public is outmatched. But there's a lot of good people there doing a lot of good work, talking to a lot of folks, putting a lot of information out there. But sometimes that information is viewed with skepticism. And I don't know when we lost the ability to sort of critically think, and evaluate all positions and challenge people and their positions. I frequently try to talk to as many legislators as we possibly can, but we have other things that we're working on. We're tied up a lot at the IURC. But by the time I remember meeting with I'm not going to name names, but this was probably 15 years ago, meeting with a new legislator who had been named to the utility committee. And I met with this legislator on the second day of the legislative session. And I'm set up. I apologize for, getting with you so late. I'm sure you've met with all of the utilities by now. And he said, oh yeah, more than once. So by the time, you get an opportunity to talk to somebody, they have already been wined and dined by one, if not all of the utilities, with slick presentations, nice handouts, very confident. They make people feel good about themselves. It's not just the cash. People think it's all about the campaign cash. Yeah, the campaign cash goes a long way, but to me, it's more about the relationships, making people feel special and important, taking them out to meals, take them to the Pacer game, the Colt game, whatever the case. They make people feel special.
They can do that. So the lobbyists can take and wine and dine our elected officials and take them to Pacers games and stuff. That's happening.
Oh, they do all the time. I did
not know
they have suites all the time. Yes.
I mean, and that is so persuasive. We love to feel like we jumped up a class and are experiencing rich people things. Like it's just a human nature. So that seems such a powerful tool. I kind of
Correct.
feel like that should be against the law. Like my
Uh,
husband works for a company and they're not allowed to do that stuff with his
Correct. Yeah.
company.
Yeah. And, sometimes, we're lucky to get 30 seconds with a legislator in an elevator. And yet, the next night we know that there's going to be 15 legislators in the suite at the Colts game with, they've got all the time in the world to have
Okay. Well,
conversations. And yeah. So,
I think that should be a lot. Now, I think it would be hard to pass it because the people that are benefiting from all these swanky fancy events have to say no to it. But we need to elect some better officials to make that a law. That seems terrible. I did not know this happened.
oh, heavens, yes. Heaven, 500 tickets, you name it. Yeah. Yep. Oh, yeah.
I did not know that. Okay. Well, that's upsetting. Okay, now I was aware of you guys doing like some type of town halls. You all came down and helped organize one at the New Albany Public Library before the election, and I know that you helped. You like, can you explain what you all do besides meet with the legislators? Because I think this is pretty amazing.
Yeah, no, we work again before the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, representing our members. Our members are customers of the of the utility companies in Indiana, and so we intervene in cases. And we decided it was time to get back out into the communities, and so we've been scheduling and holding town hall meetings. And the town hall that you're talking about is a town hall that we had in New Albany that was about the Duke rate case before the commission. And we specifically chose New Albany because there was an upcoming field hearing in the Duke rate case. And so we wanted to provide the public with information about what's in the case, what is Duke asking for, and help not only sort of bring public awareness, educate the public sort of about what this case was all about and how they can take action and how they can get involved, and that your voice does matter because the public ratepayers are allowed to comment on cases, file written comments, testify at public field hearings, and the public is very active when it comes to having their voices heard with respect to legislation, writing their state senator, writing their congressmen, writing their senators. And yet, that's where CAC comes in and say, hey, you can also play a role in regulatory outcomes and make sure that those that are making these regulatory decisions hear your voice, hear your concerns, hear your struggles, and get involved. So it's an attempt to get back into the communities, educate the public about these cases, and more importantly, activate them and inform them about how they can engage in the process.
Yeah, that's what I saw. I thought it was really amazing. I thought you all did a great job of getting the word out about what's happening with our energy bills. I still feel like the majority of Hoosiers in our state are unaware. Something that Duke has done is they raise the rates in little increments every like few months or once a year, so you barely notice. And then by the time several years have passed, it's a giant increase.
Right. Yeah, that's part of the problem with the General Assembly. They pass a lot of bills that have what's called trackers. Trackers are mechanisms that basically they're rate increases without actually filing a rate case, not a full-blown base rate case. A little confusing, but trackers are problematic because trackers allow utility companies. I was talking about the Duke gas plant, for example, House Enrolled Act 1421. That was a tracker. That's a tracker called QUIP, Construction Work in Progress, which allows utility companies to file for rate increases while they're building a power plant before it's producing any energy whatsoever. And believe it or not, even if it never produces any energy, those bills force ratepayers to pay for those projects if they get canceled, if they don't work, whatever the case may be. But those trackers are legislatively authorized in those bills that allow utility companies to file for that rate increase to raise your bills thanks to legislation passed by the General Assembly. And the problem with that is, I'm getting in the weeds a little bit here with rate making, but the problem with that is it allows a utility company to file only the costs involved with those projects without the advantage to a full-blown rate case is they've got to open up their books in a rate case. We've got to see where their costs have gone up, where their costs have gone down, what can come out of bills, what needs to go in bills, what are interest rates. It's a reset, if you will. Trackers allow them only to file the costs. So bills only go up. We're not looking at where there might be efficiencies, what might be able to be removed from bills. So trackers are inherently unfair to customers and really tie the hands of the regulators, because it's those trackers that I was talking about that say the commission shall approve. And those are some people call them bill riders or bill trackers or fees on bills. Those are just things that get tracked on. And the State House will always go, the utilities will be like, oh, well, it's only going to be $1.12 or $1.15 or $1.17. But guess what? $1.15 in June, with the, 221 in December and then $3 in May, it all adds up in the end. And before you know it, your bill's gone up 30%.
It's the whole putting the frog in the warm water and slowly heating it up so you don't notice. That seems to be happening a lot in Indiana. This tactic of just hurting something very slowly. So Wendy Danchester said to me, she was explaining how we can help them do a better job at the state house and at the state senate. She said, since it's so much legislative, so many papers, it's so little time, they're relying on the lobbyists to come in and explain. And so she was saying, like, she would need you guys to come in and say what would be bad with this thing, and like to actually write out what you would want it to be, like write out the legislative policy and say, pass it this way. Is that ever happened? Have you all been able to say, we want the word may in it instead of shall, and you write it out and you give it to them and then they pass it? Or is this just, there's no way because there's so many energy lobbyists and they're taking them out to Pacers games and stuff, and so there's no way they're going to listen to you all?
No. I think in fairness, we have made suggestions. We have expressed concerns to the authors of the bills. I have a good relationship with the utility chairs. We don't agree on a whole lot, but we have a good relationship. And out of fairness, I will say they've been responsive. We've gotten some changes through bills that we thought were significantly problematic, but that you're challenged by, even with that little change, we still don't support the bill. So you sort of have to decide as an advocate, are we just working to kill this bill? Are we working to improve the bill? You have to do both. But it can be challenging to get language into bills when even with that language, you still don't like it.
So
remarkably though, that's why I'm being fair here. They have taken suggestions from us, inserted them in bills and improved.
Well, that's good to hear, honestly.
And we still opposed.
Right.
We didn't want the bill to pass. So it's sort of that inside outside game, if you will.
So you're stopping some of the worst. It's bad things happening, but it could have been worse some of the time, is what you're saying.
Correct. Even if it's just changing a comma, changing a shall to a may, adding just a sentence here and there, and that happens. That happens more often than one would think. But again, doesn't mean we like the bill. We're still outside, raising a ruckus, telling people to, tell your legislator to vote no. But meanwhile, I sort of feel an obligation being in the building to be like, okay, if we can improve this,
I think that we should do both. I agree.
We have to do both because folks are struggling, and we sort of have a moral obligation to try to improve people's lives. We can work on reforming and resisting sort of at the same time.
Okay, so I'm going to just try to plan, what could we do? Let's say almost every Hoosier realizes we've lost control of our energy bills. Energy companies have more control. They're raising our rates. And most people are upset about it. And we organize. We all start following Citizen Action Coalition on Facebook. You can go to their website. You can get newsletters. You can follow them and you can learn what's going on more. Let's say we organize and it becomes an issue in the next election, which isn't that far away. We have primaries in less than a year. Could you all make bills, suggestions, and be like, here's what we want. Here's what would fix everything. And you give it out to candidates or people in power, elected officials that agree with you? Could we all collectively push a fix? Is there a solution here that if we all got on board and said we're only voting for candidates that support the people and support having regulated energy companies? Is that something we could do? I mean, what's
Yeah,
the answer
oh,
here?
most definitely. We had for a long time, we had a multi-year campaign about a consumer bill of rights. These are the things we need to do. We pivoted to sort of an affordability task force idea. And so we've tried different approaches, but all that stuff's on our website. And we've been talking sort of internally about this very thing, that maybe it's time to refresh that consumer bill of rights, because there are things that we could do, to fix the problem. There's so many problems. So, there's certain things that need addressed. We need to definitely have some significant regulatory reform in the way in which our regulators are chosen. Right now, they serve at the will and pleasure of the governor. Our consumer counselor, the statutory advocate for the public, serves at the will and pleasure of the governor. So number one, we need regulatory reform for the way in which our regulators and our public advocates are chosen, whether that's direct elections, whether that's an up or down confirmation vote by the General Assembly. But, we are one of, at last check, it's been a minute since I've done this research, but when we did, we're one of only 3 states in the entire country where those who regulate the investor-owned utilities are either not directly elected by the public, as is the case in 14 states, or given confirmation hearings in one or both chambers of the General Assemblies and given an up or down vote. One of 3 states. There is no visibility or transparency or accountability for those that regulate the utilities, and that's not okay. So we could start there. Number one, sort of reforming the regulatory process. We could go back again. Part of our Consumer Bill of Rights was what you mentioned earlier, sort of repealing or amending all of these tracker laws, changing shalls to may, or just repealing the stuff to begin with. And then we also have to look at, inviting some competition into an uncompetitive marketplace. Not that CAC is a fan of deregulation, if you will, customer choice, but for years, some priority issues for CAC were, number one, net metering, allowing customers to be fairly compensated for the solar panels on their roof or the wind turbines on their farms. We spent 20 years working on net metering and improving net metering, and we got a great new updated net metering rule in 2011 under that raging environmentalist that was Mitch Daniels. But his administration adopted an aggressive good net metering rule that was repealed by the General Assembly, by the supermajority in 2017. The other thing that's near and dear to CAC's heart, and first and foremost, is energy efficiency. The cheapest kilowatt hour we can generate is the one we don't. Investments in efficiency create jobs, improve people's lives, reduce costs, reduce emissions. It's a win-win. So CAC fought long and hard for statewide efficiency programs, for utility investments in efficiencies. That resulted in the Great Energizing Indiana program that was launched back in 2010. That was starting to create real results for Hoosiers. We were seeing declines in energy consumption. We were seeing monthly bills actually trending down. Guess what? Repealed by the Indiana General Assembly under Governor Mike Pence. So we need to go back to restoring net metering. We need to go back to meaningful investments in energy efficiency, because meaningful investments in efficiency, net metering, those types of policy empower consumers to control their energy costs, participate sort of in the energy economy, rather than just being subservient to the monopolies and paying monopoly prices. That's about the only choice Indiana customers have today. But we can provide some competition in that marketplace through things like net metering, energizing Indiana, community solar, things that are good for customers, that provide options, choices, competitions for the utility. When did Indiana become an anti-free market state? I've never quite understood this sort of doubling down on the monopoly utilities, entrenched monopoly utilities, and subjecting Hoosier ratepayers to the whims and wishes of these monopolies. I don't get it. I simply don't understand why we don't want to have some competition in the energy place.
I don't understand why we don't try to be the most energy efficient, why that isn't the the plan that we pick? Why are we, it's like we're hurting the environment on purpose and spite. It doesn't even make sense.
It doesn't matter. Energy efficiency is a win-win all the way around. It creates more jobs than generating energy does.
And it's
It
not like we
reduces
have
bills.
tons of energy to spare. I mean, we need to be monitoring our electricity and how much we use.
Right.
It's not like we have an excess amount of it.
And think about the manufacturing side of things that comes into making furnaces, air conditioners, insulation, all of the widgets that go into energy efficiency. It creates jobs at the manufacturing level, at the distribution level. It creates local jobs that can't be outsourced in doing weatherization and envelope improvements in houses. And then it has the added benefit of significantly reducing utility bills and putting money back in the pockets of people that will spend it, recirculate that money in the economy and invest. It just doesn't make any sense. Why we don't
I wasn't really
double down.
completely aware of that, and that's terrible. Let's talk a little bit about these AI centers. These
Goodness.
Like, so, everybody, a lot of us are using AI now. Like, I have a chat.
Whether we want to or not.
Yeah. Whether we want to or not, it comes up. They're the data centers. Yeah. So
Right.
We are now getting these data centers that are going to be built, and they cost a ton of money, and they use just a tremendous amount of energy, of electricity.
Shocking amount of energy.
And right now we are paying, the customer is paying for these energy companies to build them, because of our terrible laws. Can you go into what is happening? Because I have just heard that certain towns across Indiana, they're popping up. They're sometimes being built on wetlands with endangered animals, that people try to stop them and it's really hard to. And that I just want to know, what is your take on these data centers being built around Indiana?
Well, I would point everybody to our website. We have quite a webpage on data centers. We're now tracking data center development in Indiana. We have a great spreadsheet with a map. We're very engaged in the data center conversation because CAC has significant concerns about this data center build out and the implications that it will have on our energy bills, on our water usage, on our shared environment and shared living space. We have concerns. And so, number one, folks should understand that in 2019, Indiana passed a significant law to attract data centers. And that was the bill that provided, believe it or not, a 50-year sales tax exemption to data center and a 20-year property tax exemption as well. So let me say that again, a 50-year sales tax exemption to companies like Amazon, Meta, Google, companies with 3, 4, 5, trillion-dollar market caps. I mean, enormous companies that are now getting lavish sales tax exemptions. I think we calculated between the property tax exemptions and the sales tax exemptions just for the Amazon the data center going up in New Carlisle, Indiana, that those collectively, just the sales tax exemption for their energy bills alone and the property tax exemption was going to be in excess of $5 billion in subsidies, in lost revenues for the state of Indiana through these exemptions. So number one, we have an attractive tax environment, and let me also say, how frustrating it is that we're giving these massive mega corporations these sales tax exemptions when, people are still fighting to get a sales tax exemption on menstrual products for women and baby formula. I mean, it is just simply outrageous, but I digress. And so it's not only those attractive subsidies that is drawing data centers to Indiana, it's also the fact that we have power, we have infrastructure, we have energy, and we have a lot of water. And the only thing these data centers need is energy and water, because they don't make anything. They're just big boxes with servers that require staggering amounts of electricity. So we have a significant concern. Data centers, from Citizens Action Coalition's perspective, is the biggest threat right now to affordability of utility service for customers, and is an enormous threat to the clean energy transition and mitigating climate change, because these folks need immediate power today, and they'll take whatever power we're going to give them. So what we're seeing is a proposal for a significant build out of natural gas infrastructure, natural gas power plants. They're talking about keeping dirty and obsolete and expensive coal plants online to serve these data centers, further exacerbating climate change, further exacerbating the affordability crisis. So we're engaged in that, not because we're opposed to data centers per se, but we are opposed to the idea of data centers taking advantage of the public, not only taxpayers, but most importantly, utility ratepayers. And who should foot the bill for this
they're making
massive build-out?
everybody. They're making
And
common everyday people.
that was the subject of this year's at the General Assembly. A lot of what we passed was
I don't
because
understand
of data centers. Yeah.
What benefits is Indiana supposed to be getting from these data centers? What are we getting? What's Indiana getting from doing this?
Well, we're getting big boxes that'll employ 10 or 12 people, maybe 50
So
if you count the landscape. A few jobs. But I think it's tax base, it's tax revenue for local communities. But I think the jobs are the construction jobs and building the boxes, but also the jobs related to the energy. I don't think we can lose sight that the utilities, not all of them, some of the utilities are exploiting the data center thing, sort of saying the sky's falling, lights are going to go out if we don't build. Why?
I've heard them say that.
The utility companies make money when they spend money. So the utility companies want to build things. Whether or not they need them or not, they want to build.
And we're making it as easy as possible for them to flock all over to Indiana to build as much as possible at the expense of our drinking water, our environment, our land, and then we're also taxing. We're adding the cost of this to the consumer, the regular Hoosier living in Indiana. We're having to pay for it, and they're just making massive profits off of us. Right?
No, it's completely disgusting. And yeah, one of the worst pieces of legislation we've ever seen passed this year, and that was the tracker, if you will, for project development costs for small modular reactors. That was finally in Senate Enrolled Act 424. That was in Senate Enrolled Act 423. That was also in House Bill 1007 until it was taken out because the governor had already signed it, another bill. But just quickly, the reason we objected so strenuously to those bills is that what those bills do is forces utility ratepayers to pay for what's called project development costs, which is permitting, design, environmental analysis, licensing, stuff like that. Project development costs for utility companies to consider filing for approval of a small modular reactor. Why did I say consider? Because it forces ratepayers to pay those costs even before the utility company has committed to actually building them. And the one case use example that was visible in public at the State House was Google and Indiana Michigan Power. Google is building that large data center up in Fort Wayne. They've made it clear that Google wants carbon-free energy, and so part of their plan is to invest in SMRs, and Indiana Michigan Power wants to put SMRs down at the site of their Rockport coal-fired power plant.
And what are SMRs?
Small modular reactors.
Oh, okay.
The mini nukes, if you will. But what that bill does, what that legislation does, is rather than Google, one of the largest corporations in the world, rather than Google and Indiana Michigan Power, who's a subsidiary of American Electric Power, an enormous energy holding company that beats its chest all the time about delivering dividends to our shareholders for over 100 years, rather than those guys footing the bill for thinking about maybe building a small modular reactor, that will now fall on Indiana utility ratepayers. And to make it worse, they can collect those costs from customers even if they haven't filed for approval. And guess what? Even if they never file for approval. So what kind of money are we talking about? We're not sure. But right now, Duke Energy in North Carolina has approval from the North Carolina Utility Commissions for the very same thing. And right now, they're approved for about $400 million. $400 million from Duke ratepayers, whether or not they decide to build the thing or not. That is disgusting, especially in the context of a recent election season where it was all about energy affordability. It was President Trump, I'm going to cut your energy bills in half. Governor Braun, affordability, getting energy costs in control. And yet here we go, passing legislation like this that only serves to increase utility bills exponentially, um, on behalf of big tech and monopoly utility companies who have the money uh, to pay for it. It is politicians speaking out of both sides of their mouth. There's simply no excuse.
They act like they care about how much it costs to survive in Indiana. They act like it, but they're passing things to let the bills increase, and they don't have to take the blame. And we
Right,
need to put the blame back on them.
right,
So
and they marginalize folks like us. We're historically anti-nuke. That's well understood. That's well established. But in testifying on the bills and talking to legislators about the bills, I'm like, this bill has nothing to do about whether or not you support the idea of potential nuclear renaissance or nuclear power. Great. If you think that, great. This has everything to do with who you think should bear the risk of thinking about these investments, whether or not that should be deep-pocketed monopoly utility companies and big tech, or that should be seniors and others on fixed incomes and folks struggling to pay their bills. They're the ones that has nothing to do with whether or not you support. But people voted for that stuff, and they dismissed, the people opposing the bill as just anti-nuke kooks.
right. Well,
More
that's how
nukes,
they
less
that's how they
kooks.
gaslight and bully us when
Right.
we're fighting for the right side. It's like
Correct.
the number one playbook of bullies. They act like we're scary and we don't know what we're talking about, and they change the issues that we're talking about, and then they just ignore us.
Right. Correct.
Yeah.
It's easier to
Yeah.
dismiss. When you
Now,
can't
now we can do
shoot the
this.
messenger. Yeah.
Let's say that you're learning about this for the first time, or you knew a little bit about it and now you know more, like me. We can do stuff, you all. So step one, follow Citizens Action Coalition on whatever you follow: Facebook, Instagram. Sign up, go to their website and put your email in there so you can be informed. That's one thing. But we can fight back. Every single 2 years, we elect our state house representatives. There's 100 of them. And we can pick ones that are going to support Citizens Action Coalition and support everyday hardworking Hoosiers. It's just that we have to organize and work together. I encourage you all at Citizens Action Coalition and everybody that's involved in the government in Indiana to really boldly ask all of our elected officials their take on what's going on with our energy bills. And do they support what you do, Kerwin? Do they support you guys? And if they don't, and they'd rather go to a Pacers game and get an expensive steak dinner and keep letting our energy bills increase, then maybe we should vote them out. Like, it's possible. That's what I want you all to realize. Don't lose hope. I'm really energized that you're doing this job. I'm really glad it's your full-time job, that you're working so hard, that you're stopping some of the worst. But if we all got behind you and supported you and called out our elected officials, we can push for them to be better, and we can elect some better ones to do this,
Yeah, we got to hold people accountable. And I know life is challenging. I know folks are busy, but we got to hold people accountable. We got to go to public hearings. Don't be afraid to speak truth to power. Go to meet your legislators stuff. Be respectful, but hold them accountable for their votes and for their issues, and say, would you support this? Would you support that? And I like the idea of sort of relaunching that Consumer Bill of Rights, because it's pretty simple. These are just basic principles and basic things that we
and
can do.
I would like to help you with that, Corinne. I would like to help you with Project Next. We can help put that stuff up and amplify it as much as possible to get the word out about what you all are trying to do. And I just have a word for, I know that some elected officials watch this show, some elected officials in Indiana. It is okay if you voted for this, you voted wrong some. You might have been persuaded by the lobbyists with the energy companies, and you didn't understand that these laws were going to hurt us. It's okay that you're not perfect. I'm not perfect either. I can totally understand if you're being bombarded by so many people pushing and just explaining how great these bills are that you trust them. But now we know they're hurting us. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay to say, I messed up. I'm going to fix it. It doesn't mean that we're going to not elect you the next time. Don't be afraid to say, whoops, going to fix it this time. I'm going to put it as one of my issues. That's what I want to see. I want to see the elected officials that care about us pushing to fix the mistakes these people have made, you know?
Yeah, yeah. No, definitely. Own the mistakes, acknowledge your votes, own your votes.
Own your
Own your
votes.
votes. And it's okay. But and I would also say there's a flip side to that because frequently there are massive, massive bills that have a lot of good and some bad. And frequently legislators are sort of boxed in. Well, if I vote no, then I'm voting against this. If I vote yes, then I'm voting for this. And so I also tell people, you know, they get angry with their legislator about certain things. And I'm like, well, they're down there working hard. Show them a little grace because legislators are often, unfortunately, sometimes boxed in, on big bills. But you're exactly right. It is. We frequently get blamed by legislators when they get sort of communications from constituents about, oh, I got yelled at, show me them where it says that in
Oh,
this
they
bill.
don't like you because
Correct,
you're letting them know what they're doing.
I
Oh,
have
that's
been
funny.
chastised by legislators. We used to canvass door to door a lot, and we
I think that's
canvassed
amazing.
in all districts, and we would hand out people's voting records based on their issues. Didn't matter if they were a Democrat or a Republican.
Right.
Your record is your record. We handed out voting records, and we included campaign contributions from energy and utility companies. And we handed that to people at the door and said, here's your representative's voting record with us. And oh, by the way, here's how much money they took from the utilities. And we would get just scolded.
Like,
and I would get.
Just put a mirror up. Sorry, it's not me you're mad at.
It's your vote.
It's you.
That's your vote. You cast those checks. You cast those votes, not us. We're merely informing the public about your record.
I hope you get yelled at 10 times more this time because you're 10 times more powerful. That's not going to stop. I get that all the time.
Well, I hope my friend, the Honorable Win Moses, doesn't mind me saying this, but when I first, our first chairman of the board was the great former mayor and state representative of Fort Wayne, Win Moses. He was the first chairman of, we consider him our founding father, if you will. And when I first got to the State House, Win was a state rep for Fort Wayne. And I saw Win in the hallway, and I had a rough first couple of days. I was like, oh, a lot of people don't like us very much down here. And I went to Win and go, Win, everybody hates me down here. And Win goes, Kerwin, they don't hate you. They fear you. And never forget that. So, that piece of advice from Win went a long way to sort of.
Yeah, it should. Hopefully it's like a fuel of fire that gives you more drive when that happens, because that means you're getting the word out and they are scared of you. So they're trying to place blame on you. So yeah, I'm so thankful you have this job. I'm really thankful you took time out of your evening to come on and explain this to us. I'd like to have you on again later on, especially when the election cycle picks up. And I'm really curious to know which elected officials are working with you. Like, do you have certain ones that are like, listen, I'm trying to save energy? Is it something that's one of their main concerns? And then how can we help shine a light on them? And like, how can we get more people like that elected? Because we really need brave people that can say no to Pacers tickets or dinners and say yes to saving Hoosiers' energy bills and protecting people, keeping them housed, making their life not such a struggle. So I know we can do that. We just have to work together and agree that we're not all perfect and we're not going to agree on everything. But I think we should collectively work together, Democrats, Republicans, independents, libertarians, people never voting. I think we can all get together and agree this is something we should fix in Indiana.
Yeah, we should all strive to ensure that, we have low-income households in the state paying 20 and 30% of their income on their energy and utility bills, and that's just crazy. That's just not okay. Yeah, we're happy to come back on the show again and talk. And yes, let's stay in touch and let's work on this Consumer Bill of Rights and start pushing this thing.
When you
out
get
and,
that ready,
driving some change.
Text me or call me and let's have you on and let's talk about it. And I want to give action steps to people watching. I want to give them, here's a picture, here's a graphic, take it, send it to everybody, send it to your local officials. Let's put pressure on them. Let's say, we want these things done. What are you going to do? We can you could do that now. You can email your elected officials and say, what are your plans when you go back into office to fix the mistakes that have been made? We want our children to live here, right?
Yes.
Don't we? We want our children to grow up here. What kind of Indiana are we creating for them? Because right now it seems a little scary. And
Yep.
I just think it's not acceptable. Our kids
Yep.
deserve better.
No,
So
we couldn't agree more. And everybody, go to our website, check us out, citact.org, sign up for our emails, take a look around. I am incredibly proud of the team and the staff that we have at Citizens Action Coalition, working hard every day and making a difference. And it's evident by the work that we do in our website and everything else. So I'm honored, to have the job that I have, and I appreciate coming on the show. And let's stay in touch.
yeah, you guys are awesome. You help me in my dark days when it's hard to get up because the news is negative. People like you fighting the good fight, working together, protecting people, trying to make people's lives better. That keeps me going. So thank you for what you're doing. Everybody follow them, go to their website, share the show, let people know in Indiana what's going on. Most people still do not know. Most people still do not realize what type of terrible things are happening and are going to continue to happen if we don't push for better. So,
And one thing I don't want to forget, we're
yes.
on all the social channels as well, but especially check out our YouTube channel, because I talked about these town halls. We record all those. Those are posted on our YouTube channel. We're out there recording all of these community meetings about data centers and other things, and we put all that stuff on our YouTube channel.
That's amazing. What is your YouTube channel called?
There's a link on our website, on the top of our website, to the
I
YouTube
bet if you
channel.
search Citizens Action Coalition on YouTube, you can pull it up. I will
think it's just
subscribe
so
I can tag you. I'll try to tag you all on this show.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, because we're on YouTube as well. So that's awesome. So subscribe to their YouTube channel. The more people watching what Citizens Action Coalition does is just like bumping them up and putting a bigger spotlight on them. And eventually our elected officials cannot ignore us. So we want to help this amazing group. And we know you're not bullying. We know you're not extremists. We know you're fighting for everyday Hoosiers, and we're very appreciative of it. So don't you let them think for a second that they're getting away with that.
No, you're too kind. I appreciate that. I do have some rough days at the State House where I come home pretty cranky, but got to get out and do it again. So
I just want to say you can call me if you need a pep talk, because that sounds really hard. I've done that before. I've tried to get lawmakers to see better, and some days are hard. This is hard work, but we wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't so incredibly important.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So thank you everybody. Thank you for all the people that commented and watched the show live, and just please share it and let's get the word out. And you guys, we'll see you all later, and have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you so much, Kerwin Olsen from Citizens Action Coalition. Bye everybody.
Thanks.